Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our open house this morning for the California High-Speed Rail program here in the beautiful city of Montebello. We are concluding our meeting series over the last couple of weeks on the Los Angeles to Anaheim section of the California High-Speed Rail program. This is a new high-speed rail system that is being planned and actually already being built here in the state of California, and we are here today to provide you a specific update on the planning that is being done for this specific geographic section between Los Angeles and the city of Anaheim. So today you'll receive information which is the latest information about the planning of this alignment, how it interacts with the other rail services here, and what you can expect going forward. Just to be clear, today's presentation is informational. We will not be making any decisions, and you'll see in the presentation where we are in the timeline so that you know what to expect going forward and when decisions will be made, and ultimately a build alignment will be selected for the High-Speed Rail Authority to move forward with constructing and bringing high-speed rail service here to Southern California. My name is Genoveva Arellano. I am a member of the outreach team for the High-Speed Rail Authority, and we are here today, as I mentioned, to provide you with the latest information. We also welcome our online audience who is viewing us online and will be able to see the presentation here going forward through the Authority website, so welcome. If I can see, for those of you who are in attendance today who is attending a high-speed rail meeting for the first time, if you could raise your hand, please. So I see about 4 or 5 individuals. It's great that you're here, and we really encourage you to continue to stay involved. Now that you're here, you're on our database and will receive noticing going forward, but we do quite an expansive notification for all of our meetings. For people to actually come and interact with our staff here at the meetings, but we also, as you can see, provide the information online so folks can receive the information from home. Most importantly, we want to make sure the word is getting out about this really transformational transportation system that is being planned here in Southern California. So one way or another, we want to make sure you know. And please feel free to share with your neighbors, colleagues at work about this really modern and world-class transportation system that is happening right now. So it's very important that everyone knows. We do all of our noticing throughout the entire corridor area in multiple languages, and we really ask our cities and our partners, our elected offices, to also help us with spreading the word. So we thank everyone who has helped to get the word out. Today we are offering today's meeting in both English and in Spanish, and we actually have an interpreter who is available to do simultaneous translation in Spanish. Entonces, si hay alguien aquí que necesita traducción en español, tenemos alguien que le puede ayudar. Por favor, díganos si necesita traducción. Estamos aquí para servirles. We, for all of our public meetings, provide the appropriate languages to make sure that the communities that have a non-English speaking community, that we provide those languages. So we want to make sure any which way folks are receiving our information. The high-speed rail system is brand new to the United States, and California is the first state in the country to actually begin building a high-speed rail system. It exists in other parts of the world and has since the late 1960s, but the United States has not, for multiple reasons, invested in this technology. So we're happy to present to you today about the progress that has been made and what we can expect here locally. Planning high-speed rail here at the local level is very challenging, and there's a lot that goes on in order to make the line work just as it should with local systems. So we'll be reviewing that with you, and again, all of that is done in collaboration with our local communities. The Los Angeles to Anaheim section has been in planning for a number of years. We had public meetings on this about more than a year ago, and today's information updates what we presented to you the last time around. So we have more information today about refinements to this alignment that is within the existing rail corridor. It's called the low sand corridor, what you can expect for high-speed rail within that corridor. Our staff is here to answer questions, and the presentation will review everything for you. As I mentioned, it's not a decision point. Today's presentation is really informational and giving you the update since the last time around. All of our meeting information that you will be seeing today and in the room is available online, so you can go back and review any of the presentation and the mapping specifically so that you have the latest. We also welcome comments and questions on the system at any time, so through our email address, through our hotline, or mailing us. The authority is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to receive your information, and everything is recorded. We will be getting to a point at some point in this project where the comments will be formal and required by a certain date in order to receive them officially on the project. We'll review all of that for you, but that won't be for another year or so. We will be doing questions and answers following the presentation, and for those of you in the room, we have a blue card that you received at the registration desk. Feel free to fill in your question that you have for us, and our staff will go around collecting those. For those of you online, feel free to chat your question in, and we'll write it down and make sure that that's addressed as well during the presentation or after the presentation. I want to make a quick reference to the handout. One of the handouts that you received coming in. It's a nice map that reviews specifically some of the features of the LA to Anaheim section. You can use this as a reference. And again, for those of you online, it is part of the material that is available to you. You can click on it and use that as a reference. With that, I would like to introduce our project manager for the Los Angeles to Anaheim section, Melissa de la Peña, to begin our presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Heno. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your Saturday to come and listen and learn more about the high-speed rail system. So this is our agenda for today. We're going to go through some of the statewide information and then narrow in on specifically the LA to Anaheim section of the project. So there was a couple of you that haven't been to a high-speed rail meeting before. So just to familiarize you with this map, this shows the full high-speed rail system that is under planning. So the blue line that you see in the center is phase 1 of the program, and that's the portion that's either under construction or under environmental clearance at this time. And then there are 2 yellow branches from the north and the south, one up to Sacramento and the other south to San Diego. And these are phase 2 the phase 2 of the system, which will be constructed and planned for the future. One thing that I want to make clear is that this is an all-electric system, so it does address air quality, which is a major concern for California. As our population continues to grow, we want to make sure we have multiple options, other options to get around the state. All of our airports and roadways are maxed out, and we wanted to provide some sort of a release valve for transportation, efficient transportation up and down the system and the state. Another thing, as this is a new technology, as Genoveva mentioned, we will be bringing job growth as part of the system. And the technology may be new to us, but it is in existence in many other countries, as you know. Okay. No problem. I'll discuss the next slide, although it will come up here in a minute. One thing we like to point out is the stations along the alignment that are proposed. We've kind of used the largest cities in the state to drive the alignment and to drive the position of the stations. So there we go. There's the table that shows the top 10 largest cities in California by population. So 8 of the 10 of these are high-speed rail stations, proposed high-speed rail stations along the system. And we like to point out that unlike airports where the airport is outside of the heart of the city, the stations for high-speed rail are connecting the hearts of the city, so you don't have to take that additional transportation from the airport to get to your destination if you're going to the city's center. Also, a lot of people don't realize that this project is under construction. There is almost 120 miles of the system that are under construction in the Central Valley from Madera down to just north of Bakersfield. So these photographs here are actually from the high-speed rail construction that's happening today. This timeline shows how much we've been working on the high-speed rail program. On the left, we have the program EIR-EIS, which occurred in 2005. Moving toward 2015, that's when we had our groundbreaking for the construction that I just mentioned. Right now, we're kind of in the middle of what's shown on that timeline, and we're doing the draft and the final EIR-EIS for the phase 1 of the system. And looking forward, the Silicon Valley to Central Valley segment will be the portion that will be operating earlier. So 2025 is the date when that would be up and running. And then the whole phase 1, the whole blue line that we showed on the initial map, that will be open in 2029. So zooming into Southern California, this map shows the part of the project that is actually run and delivered out of our Los Angeles office, which is at LA Union Station. So you can see that there are 5 sections that cover Southern California, and these are Bakersfield to Palmdale, Palmdale to Burbank, Burbank to Los Angeles to Anaheim, which we're covering today, and then the phase 2 leg from Los Angeles to San Diego. Just to give you an idea what the timelines are like, to get from LA to San Francisco is 2 hours and 40 minutes. The LA San Diego will be 1 hour and 20 minutes. So this creates some connectivity, some facility to get to places a lot faster than we do today. And we're not just looking for just rail and cars. We're looking at multimodal hubs at all of our station locations, make sure that pedestrians, bikes, all modes can access our system. South of Burbank, we enter what we call the urban corridor area. And this is the part of the project where we are proposing to put our electrified high-speed rail tracks within an existing rail corridor. And Genevieve mentioned it's the Losan corridor, and it's where the existing Metrolink trains, Surfliner, run from Burbank down to San Diego. And we are utilizing that corridor to put our high-speed rail tracks. So you can see the graphic on the right shows all the other operators that also exist within this corridor today. So there's a lot of coordination with Metro, Metrolink, OCTA, the freight rail, Amtrak. And we're utilizing our project to modernize the corridor, not just for us, but for all the other users as well. Another thing to note for these areas where it's the urban corridor, we're not going at the high speeds that are proposed for sections north of Burbank. So we're at 125 or less, or 110 for the area from LA to Anaheim. Zooming in a little closer just to the LA Anaheim section, this is the map that shows our corridor and our proposed alignment. The colors on the map, I'll point out, the green means that the alignment is at grade, so it's at the level that the tracks exist today. There are some blue sections which represent areas where the tracks are on a structure or on a viaduct. And then the purple represents where we're underground. So you can see from this map, the majority of the alignment is at grade, so it's going to closely reflect what is out there today. And this has been a result of multiple refinements that we've been working on since our last round of public meetings. We previously had more areas where we were on viaduct, and now we've been able to refine the alignment so that we can stay within the corridor and stay at grade. We've also made sure to maintain capacity for future growth of passenger service and freight service that will be occurring with or without high-speed rail in the future. Things that we're proposing for the corridor are positive train control will exist there so that we can monitor the trains, make sure that we keep track of where all the trains are and are able to implement safety measures. It will also incorporate grade separations, which we will cover in some later slides. And this is all to reduce emissions and congestion and make the corridor a better neighbor to the surrounding communities. This map shows other potential projects that are planned in the area. We thought it was important to show this because there's so many projects going on that sometimes it's hard to keep track of which is which, and some people confuse our corridor with corridors that other projects are using. So if there are specific questions on this, I encourage you to come talk to us afterward. But there are alignments, for example, the Metro Gold Line extensions. Those are shown on the north side in the yellow color. There's also a planned extension from LAX on the green line that is connecting to Norwalk Santa Fe Springs. So you can see that connectivity. And aside from just showing the location of these projects, we also want to make sure everybody knows we're keeping track of them so that we can make sure that our system collaborates with those as appropriate. We want to make sure we're not precluding those projects, and that if there's any possibility to multiply the benefit of working together with the stakeholders planning these, that we take advantage of those. And you can see there is a very dense area, lots of cities to collaborate with, and lots of agencies, just like on the map before. There are 4 stations proposed as part of the LA Anaheim section. So there's LA Union Station, Norwalk Santa Fe Springs, Fullerton, and Arctic. It's the terminus for the phase 1. So these are all existing stations today, but we will be adding infrastructure and amenities to each of these stations so that they can accommodate a stop from the high-speed rail system. So typical things that the stations will have are just integration with the existing facilities where available, tracks and platforms that would accommodate the electrified system, parking for both bike and car, and pickup and drop off is critical these days in the age of Uber and everything. So those are important to keep track of too. One other thing that we've been looking at for the stations is making sure that there is access from both sides of the corridor wherever possible. And we want to have direct rail and transit connections to make sure that people can get that first and last mile to our system. Auto circulation is also key, so we plan for potential traffic pattern modifications associated with any improvements at these stations. So these will all be looked at as part of the environmental document. I mentioned grade separations earlier just to explain and clarify what a grade separation is. It's where the rail and the road meet at the same level and the cars need to stop, gates come down, and we need to wait for the train to pass. So a grade separation is where we take the road over or under and eliminate that conflict so that we don't have to wait. And there's a lot of benefits associated with that, aside from just eliminating the wait time. Obviously, it's enhanced safety because we don't want people crossing the tracks if they don't have to. We also are compliant with the quiet corridor. The trains don't need to honk the horns if there's a grade separation. It also further reduces greenhouse gas emissions since there's no idling cars. And then it improves the reliability of both the train and the roadway operations. So along with all those benefits, however, there are some impacts, and we realize that although the majority of the corridor is maintained within the existing right-of-way, there are areas for these grade separations specifically where we understand there's going to be impacts that radiate outside of the corridor. So the blue shading on that figure on this slide is meant to represent potential impacts associated with implementing a grade separation. So the reason that the shape is odd is because it takes into account things like utility relocations, roadway detours, modified access to certain properties that could be required, and also temporary laydown areas for construction. So we wanted to make sure that everything was taken into account as part of our study so that we can make sure we're mitigating for anything that is a result of this work. Once we lay out the grade separation, we also continue to look at it to try and refine and minimize the impacts at that location. So since this is a very active rail corridor today, it is mostly grade separated already. So the map on the right shows all the grade crossings that exist today, and whether it's going to be proposed as a new grade separation or a modified crossing along the alignment. One we like to point out that Metro is working on right now is Rosecrans Marquardt. It's one of the most unsafe crossings, certainly in this corridor. And high-speed rail is a funding partner to get that to be one of our new grade separations. So there are 11 new separations proposed. Of the 15 roads that currently cross at grade, 11 of those will be grade separated. There are 23 that will require modification along the corridor that are already separated. 2 are proposed to remain at grade, so it'll be an at-grade crossing, and then 2 will be closed or cul-de-saced. So that's our current proposal right now. And we will be conducting focus meetings at the areas of new grade separations to kind of make sure the community understands what's being proposed. Other features that are required to keep the train in operation are the overhead contact system. So those are the overhead wires. That's part of what we're proposing. Paralleling stations, communication towers. All of these things have been laid out in our preliminary plans so that we make sure to account for those as part of our study. There is also an early earthquake warning system that is going to be implemented as part of the project. So this senses the first wave of an earthquake and slows the train down. This is already in use in Japan and has been found to be very successful. There's also intrusion protection, which is in essence fencing along the corridor. We understand that it's a very porous corridor right now. Some has fence, some doesn't. So we want to make sure that we protect both sides of the fence and ensure that nothing gets inside the rail corridor once it's built. And the fence could take the form of a sound wall if it is found through the environmental study that a noise wall is required. So it could take that form as well. Just to cover a little bit more about our stakeholder engagement, like our meetings today, we like to remind everybody that the community's input is just as important as the other elements that are driving us toward our ultimate alternative. So we have our project objectives, which are basically what's required to operate the train, our design requirements. Then there's also the environmental resources, which through our technical studies underway now, begin to develop and drive our alternative as well. But the community's input is critical, and that's why we come around as much as we can to talk to everybody about what's being proposed and keep them up to date on the program. And this is a list of our most recent meetings. We just held our stakeholder working groups last month, and over 400 organizations were invited to that. We also, this is our last open house of this round, and we continue to have ongoing community activities. We try to implement updates for high-speed rail in potential communities, organizations that already exist. They may already have recurring meetings, monthly meetings, and if we can, we try to find a way into those meetings so that the community, as part of their regular routine, can learn more about the high-speed rail. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jaime Guzman, our environmental lead. He's going to cover the environmental process.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So I'm going to talk briefly about the environmental process, which is part of where we're at now in the planning of the project. So the authority, as a mandate, wants to first avoid any potential impacts as much as possible. Then we think about if we can't avoid it, we want to minimize the amount of impacts that we may have. And then if we cannot do that either, we then look at mitigation, which is what the environmental document will do. As we talked about right now, we're undergoing planning and design, as well as the environmental review. And so all of this avoidance, minimization, and mitigation occurs as throughout this whole process. We have been working on this project for a while. We've worked on several alternative analyses, and at this point, we are working on doing the extensive environmental and engineering design on this project. That means that we do several technical reports on many environmental topics, and I'll show you that in a further slide. And our ultimate goal is then to present a recommended alternative to the board, and then publish the document with that alternative and all the analysis. Some of the more detailed work that we've been doing with the environmental work has been to do some field work. And some of this has been achieved primarily in the public right-of-way. So we've done some cultural resources survey. This is a very urbanized area, and obviously some of the communities have been around for a long time, and so there's definitely some historic properties that are within our study areas. And study areas does not mean necessarily that we're going to impact every property in that area, but we want to, as a precaution, to look at also both direct and indirect impacts, and that's why we have study areas. We look at visual impacts. As we mentioned, some of the alignment goes through a viaduct. That means it's a higher structure, so we want to look and assess what the existing visual is around the area, and then that way we can compare it to the future with project. Taking existing vibration and noise readings as well as traffic. That way we can compare it to the future condition, and then also look at biological resources. So our document is an EIS, an environmental impact report, environmental impact statement, and that means that we are guided by both state law and federal law. And so there's a lot of different topics that we have to evaluate in our reports, from aesthetics and visual, like I mentioned, to cultural resources. There's federal specific ones like environmental justice, and 4F, it has to deal with the parks, use of parks if we affect any. So we are going through and doing very detailed technical reviews at this point on all of these topics that you see here. And that will lead us into the preparation of the draft document that will take information from these technical reports and incorporate it into that. These technical reports will be part of that environmental impact report as well, so that, and all of this will be available online when the document becomes public. In terms of the environmental schedule, what we have here is, as I mentioned, we are now conducting additional community outreach, which this is the last open house that we're having. We are also doing the detailed analysis. The hope is that we will have a public document out in the fall of this year, and that will allow people to review that and provide comments back. And we hope is that in the spring of next year, we will have approval both from the federal and from the state on the project, environmental.
Thank you, Jaime and Melissa, for that presentation. What we'd like to do is remind you of, this is the meeting series actually that we are concluding today about the LA to Anaheim section. So these are the various locations where we've held this very same meeting. And as I mentioned earlier, this morning's webcast will be recorded and available online, so it continues to be available to the public for ongoing learning about the project. It is a lot of information. We will continue to do meetings like this to make sure that people are absorbing and understanding this potential, this project that is being introduced into this existing rail corridor here in Southern California. I don't have to tell you, it's a very active rail corridor with lots of freight and passenger service already. So this is a very innovative idea of bringing a new form of transportation, high-speed transportation, to help us connect not just to points locally, but to the entire state of California. It's really opening up opportunities for education, employment, travel, for all of us to access and enjoy our state. We have, as I mentioned earlier, the email address, our website, and our hotline for you to continue to connect with us and receive information on an ongoing basis. So for those of you here in the room, if you have any questions that you would like to submit, again, I'd like to remind you to please use your blue card, and our panel will be happy to address those one by one. And for those of you online, if you'd like to chat us a question, we'll be able to address that now. And if there are no questions here in the room, the team will still be available here to continue to answer your questions and dialogue with you about any specific questions. I would really encourage you to visit our maps and focus in on where you work or where you live, so that you understand how the rail corridor may be changing nearby where you are. With that, I'd like to thank all of you here today and online for your participation. Please stay connected with us and continue to follow us on social media or online. We will continue to keep you informed about the project as we go forward. Once again, thank you so much for attending this morning.